Welcome to this screencast. This is a quick screencast on how to use Gitpod. Gitpod is a browser online or a workspace online, a code IDE, a place you can write and run your code in the cloud. Um, Gitpod is kind of Visual Studio Code on in the cloud so that you don't have to install any kind of software to get up and running. You just create a little account and add a browser extension and then go to your GitHub and get going. So first thing that you need is a GitHub or GitLab or Bitbucket account. So if you don't have that, you'll want to sign up for one of those three services to really take advantage of Gitpod. Sign up for Gitpod is pretty easy. You go to gitpod.io and you can click on try now or click on any of the um, code repo icons. Um, then once you're signed up, you can use a Gitpod URL to launch a workspace. So you just use gitpod.io, and then if you have a Git workspace, you can do https github.com, your username, and the workspace. Let's try hello. It's probably not going to be found, but that would launch a Gitpod instance. And let's go ahead and create a workspace in GitHub. Let's create a new repository and we'll call it hello and hit create. Now I've got that repository and there's a browser extension you can install that will give you this Gitpod button to launch right out of the gate. But let's go back to Gitpod IO, and then we'll use the hash tag, and then we'll type our repository. So github.com twilson63 and hello. And now that that repository exists, it should proceed to launch in my browser. Let's see. Maybe I need to do that. There we go. So what's happening now is it's essentially creating a Docker container and pulling my code repository down um, and instantiating that container and then opening up my repository using VS Studio Code. So it's an empty repository. Don't have anything. I've got VS Studio Code and I've got a theme set here, and we can change that. I'll change it back, but my color theme is high contrast Thea. We could go to Solarize Dark. Let's see, or light and dark. And you can even kind of load your themes. But we'll go back to high contrast Thea for now, which is pretty cool. So I've got a terminal here. Say hello, right? And we can change the prompt, which is kind of cool. use my smiley face prompt, kind of like that. Oh, it didn't do blue. I must have mistyped something. Oh well. Then we got our smiley face here, and you've got your file window here. Create a new file. Call it readme.md, and works works just like VSCode, um, except it is in the browser. Cool. Um, you have settings. You can set your user settings or your workspace settings specifically. And again, you've got access to Git, so we can go ahead and do a Git status, Git and README. Let's go ahead and save this README. Hello world. You can add it. Commit and push. And cool. So now we can go to GitHub and we can see, if we look up our hello repository, we can see we've got our README in there, and we haven't had to check out anything, clone anything, push anything down, which is pretty cool. Now, the browser extension, if we do extension, so you can install this browser extension and you can choose Chrome, and Chrome works with Brave or Firefox. And then basically every time you go to your repository, a repository under your account, you'll see this Gitpod button. So let's do that. Let's go to github.com/twilson63/hello. And here we have our Gitpod button. And essentially, if you look down on the bottom left corner, you'll see that it's just doing gitpod.io/pound and then your URL. Now, what's cool about it is you can be on specific branches or specific tags, etc., and launch the Gitpod workspace. So we'll just pull from there and launch it straight from the browser extension. It's pretty nice. And you can pretty much do everything that you can do in Visual Studio Code, but using Gitpod. And it's free for open source and kind of I think 10 hours of usage, but then the paid plan is pretty reasonable. I think for like unlimited, it's $25 a month per developer. And it's got a lot of great features for not only for working in the cloud, so you can work on multiple workstations and not have to worry about moving your code, but some other important features. The one that I'm really excited about is the ability to, keep your onboarding projects kind of up to date. And what I mean by that is, since every time you launch a Gitpod workspace, you're kind of starting from scratch, you keep your repos up to date so that anyone that comes to use your repo are really having the smoothest experience as possible. And there's some pretty cool ways uh, to keep that onboarding experience for your development environment up to date. And one of those is, let's say you have a database you want to install, or AWS CLI. That's one that I use a lot. You can actually, customize your container, and you can do that. The easiest way to do that is to use the Gitpod CLI here. Let's see. Yeah. So the Gitpod CLI will give you a bunch of cool commands, and one of them is this init command. So what that will do is init a Gitpod configuration for your project. So if we do gp init, it's going to create a YAML file and a Docker file. And for the YAML file, we can specify some pretty cool things. We can um, define the image that we want Gitpod to use. So we're going to use our Docker file image, and we'll get into that. But then we can trigger some things to happen and when a port is exposed, and that's pretty cool. So here, if we run a web server, let's do index.html, and in index.html, let's just do hello world, and we'll do npx w3. And so that should launch a web service on port 3000. And because of our Gitpod YAML, it automatically launched this preview to that. So we're good to go, which is really pretty cool. And you could tell it to launch in the browser, and it would open in the browser. And I think there's some other events that you can do here. So you could check it out at this URL to see how to configure that. And then on startup, let's say we want to init, like when our container is building, we could, kind of do an npm install or do something like that on this init. And then let's say, when the container starts, let's say we want to go ahead and start our web service. So we could do npx w3 dot, right? And that will start that up. So if we, kind of close out of this workspace and we go to GitHub and hello. So the next time we come in, it should take effect our changes to our init. So it should start to load those. And let's see. Let's just start a new workspace just to make sure. You know what? I did not add those files to the repository, so it's not going to do that. But that's cool. So this is going to start us from where my last commit was, which was just the README. But if I want to get access to a previous instance, I can come in and see my workspaces and see which ones that are active, and I can also view all of them. So it keeps unlimited, it keeps inactive ones as well. So in theory, I should be able to open this workspace and get back to where I did my configuration files. So it still remembered those. Let me add those to my repository. Okay. And let's add index.html. So now that we've got those added, now if we go back to our GitHub, and launch, now that it's recognized that we made some changes, it should prepare it. So it's going to build a new image for us based on that Docker file in our repository, which we're not really doing much yet with that, but it'll build that image, and then it will add the Gitpod layer and do all that kind of stuff. Now, if you have a lot of stuff that you're adding, you can use this setup called pre-builds, and pre-builds will actually look at changes in your Git hub repository, and as they change, then Gitpod will create a new image and keep that image up to date, so you won't have to see it build the image every single time, which is very cool too. So again, kind of forces you to have this really nice, clean kind of onboarding experience every single time. Um, and it gives you tools to do that. So hopefully when this opens, it's going to run an npm install, and it's going to launch our browser, and we're good to go, which is really cool. So that's kind of the onboarding piece, and it just really keeps your repository kind of very easy to get started as a developer, which I think's important. um, and then the other feature that's really cool for teams especially is collaboration. So you can, let's see, go to Workspace and hit share running Workspace, and you'll get this URL, and you can give that to any other person, and they would be able to connect to your workspace, and you would be able to work together. And that is really cool. And then the other one is maybe you need to share something asynchronously. Um, you can actually share your workspace snapshot. And in that case, they would spin up your snapshot just like we did just a minute ago, and be able to work from that state, um, versus running inside your workspace. So that's pretty cool. Um, it really gives you a very clean mob feature for collaborating with code. Um, and, just to show you the Docker file for a minute here is just a normal Docker file, unless, say, for example, we wanted to add, the AWS CLI. That's one I use, but you could install, Cypress, or install a database, etc. Um, but let's just say you wanted to um, install the AWS CLI. Let me try to save some time here and pull up the code to do that. Sure, I've got it in here. Oh, okay. Well, instead of the AWS CLI, let's say you want to install Dino. Dino is a runtime like Node.js, um, and it's pretty cool. So let's do that. We can just paste these run commands in our Docker file and save those. Let's commit those. And then the next time we launch this workspace, we'll have Dino installed. So go to GitHub. And that's pretty cool. So it's basically running the Docker build, and now it's installing Dino and in our image. And you can, like I said, install like the AWS CLI, you can install databases, you can install all kinds of things to make your setup, very seamless and transparent. Um, you can save your particular themes or kind of your Visual Studio configuration either at the user level or the workspace level. And all of those settings work just like Visual Studio Code. Um, and then, the other thing that kind of comes up is, kind of specific development configuration variables that you may not want to store in a repository, right? Like secrets and keys and things like that. And, you know, the way to do that I found to be the best, and we'll just let's see if we've got Dino installed here. And we do. Pretty cool. Just like that. Now, the way that I found to store secrets, let's say we wanted to store something for our development environment and wouldn't carry over to another developer, they would have to do this on their end, is use the Gitpod CLI GP, do environment, hello, world, like that. And what that'll do is the next time I spin up this workspace, then that environment variable should be set. And try it one more time. And that's a really cool way to manage some of your environment stuff. Let's see. Let me just do a new workspace. See if it gets that environment. So when you do set that, it's going to be set for the next time the new workspace runs. So you do need to set your environment variables for that particular time locally, just do an export or something like that. Yeah, so I think I covered pretty much all the basics with Gitpod. There's a ton more you can do. Like I use the terminal and run Vim on it, and that's super fun. And to me, I think a lot better than the Vim extension in here. But you've got access to pretty much all the um, you know extensions that you would have for Visual Studio Code. Again, you've got kind of all the kind of Visual Studio Code features right there in your window. And yeah, let's see if our environment variable got set. World command hunt found. So echo. So it's set, which is pretty cool. Um, Again, like I said, there's a ton more stuff you can do, but I just wanted to go through some of the things that I found valuable. And yeah, thanks again for your time.